Chasing our dreams and building our business has many obstacles, and many of those obstacles can be put into three distinct categories. This week, we'll identify what those categories are and how to overcome each one.
Running a service business can be hard. It is not unusual for business owners in industries like contracting, home repair, auto repair, business-to-business services like janitorial, IT and accounting, and many others to feel overwhelmed by all the priorities facing them at any given time. Between addressing the needs of the customers, managing the employees, figuring out the financials, and getting processes in place, feeling like you're making significant progress on your business journey can be difficult. Welcome to Service Industry Success, hosted by Brian Harding. Each week, Brian will look at real-world strategies for building the business you are dreaming of, while also sharing tactics to get through some of the most frustrating parts of business ownership with a lot more ease. Let's get started.
So it's nothing new to hear. We're going to face many challenges as we grow our business. Of course, that's the way it works. As I often say, if it wasn't so hard, lots of people would do it and it wouldn't pay very well. And it's unlikely, we could create solutions for every problem we're going to have. I would say it's probably impossible. Just, the sheer volume of information that would be necessary. We only have a limited human brain. We can only remember so much and apply so much and catalog so much information. So there's just the sheer volume of things to overcome every single problem. Like, I think it's kind of crazy to think we could do that. But also, even if we could, by the time we figured things out, they change. I'm 50 years old, so I'm old enough to remember in, circa 1984, the F-150, the Ford F-150 commercial where the truck is going up the hill, bouncing on these big boulders or rocks or logs or whatever it was, and it's towing a Dodge truck and has a Chevy truck in the back of it, sideways on the bed, and it was all about horsepower and torque and things like that. And now, 40 years later, Subaru commercials, the tagline is Subaru is made with love. pretty, pretty big difference in how we do marketing nowadays. Again, so that's just one example of how things change. Of course, there's overarching long-term economic cycles. There's things that are out of our control with, socioeconomic policies and how things are unfolding in the world. There's these big economic things that are macro level things that change. Customer needs and their criteria for buying decisions change. Employee needs and criteria for staying with a job change. Technology change. Like, the list goes on and on. There's tons of different individual kinds of problems we're going to face, but there are constants. And I think that the types of problems we face are similar, not just over many years and decades, but over like centuries and millennia. And I think there's three main types we must be able to identify and overcome. And these are not going to be things you've never heard of before. But I do think it's important that we understand the solution we're going to go over the types of problems and the solutions. And the reason I'm doing this is because the solutions are not universal, but sometimes they're kind of presented as universal. For example, you'll hear people say, well, you just need to dream a bigger dream. Well, and that's true. It's 100% true in some instances. And there's other times where there's other solutions that would be more applicable for a particular type of problem we have. If you don't know how to do something, just dreaming about it isn't dreaming about how great your life is going to be doesn't help you get to the solution. So that's why I'm going through this is, again, all the things I'm going to talk about here are things you've heard. I'm 100% sure you've heard of every single one of these things I'm going to talk about. I do think, though, it's helpful to go through each type and connect the type of solution to the type of problem, because I think that's helpful for us, especially as we're training up and coming leaders and salespeople and our employees doing the job. Like, this is great stuff for all the people in the organization to know. In my experience, it was very helpful for me anyway. So that's why I'm sharing it. The first type of problem I think we face is unawareness/uncertainty. I kind of bundle all that together. There's problems we don't know how to solve, and there's problems we aren't even aware of. Hence the saying, I don't know what I don't know. That saying applies to building a business in a wide variety of situations. There's tons of things that we're not even aware that there's problems, right? This is one of those things that's easier to point out for somebody else. Like, if you've ever been a parent, you've ever been in somebody in a role where you're teaching people or mentoring people, like, you can just see that I look back at the 24-year-old me and I'm like, that guy, did, that guy didn't have a clue. He didn't know. So these are things that are easier to point out in other people than others. Sometimes though we know, obviously we know we have a problem, but don't know the solution. This is easy for us to figure out. I have some unawareness / uncertainty here that is causing a problem, and I need to find a solution. It's not as evident or quick to reveal itself though when we don't know we have the problem. And so it's easy to figure this out over time, though, because we'll continue not getting the results and outcomes we would like. So, for example, you know, random things. Why aren't our customers eager to refer us? Why aren't prospective customers more aware that we're different than brand X? Why won't my employees do this thing? Why aren't we making enough money? These are the kinds of things that over time an unawareness would reveal itself that we wouldn't have in a quick time frame. You wouldn't immediately know that customers are not going to be eager to refer you. But over the period of months or years, or certainly over decades, this would become aware. Like, why are other companies getting people to refer them and we're not? That would be something we wouldn't have an immediate awareness of, but over time we would learn we're not getting the outcomes we want, and therefore it would reveal that we would be revealed that we have some kind of unawareness or uncertainty. We don't know how to do a thing. And so the solution here, I think for all of us, is hard. Many of us, it's hard, not all of us. For some, harder than others, for sure. The solution is just to ask. Somebody always knows. It's incredibly unlikely that any particular problem we are facing is unique to us in our situation. Does it ever happen? Yeah, probably, but it's not as common as we probably would think. And I'm a firm believer there's only two ways to learn: mentorship or mistakes. Meaning, you ask somebody who's done it, ask somebody who's had to overcome the thing, ask somebody who has history with this, ask somebody who has experience in this arena, or trial and error. And if you look at how businesses are built and how departments and companies are built and how things go in as we're building, our organizations, we either keep bumping up against the problem and trying different things and boom, one day we have a solution, or we ask the right person who knows and they help us. And so this could be asking industry peers and colleagues. Like if you have an accounting company in Phoenix, you may not want to ask your competitor, but you could find somebody who has an accounting company in Memphis or in Dallas or in New York or something like that. There's people we can ask. There's industry associations that are fantastic for this kind of things. We can ask our customers. Oftentimes, in my experience, customers are not only okay with helping, but sometimes they're eager to help. Like if I can present a problem I'm having to a customer in the context of help me get better at this so I can better serve you, like why wouldn't they help me with that? I have found that generally speaking, the types of customers I've had that I wanted to ask their opinion were eager to help. If not eager, certainly willing. I don't remember ever asking a customer again. I wouldn't ask customers who were just a pain in the butt to work with, but I don't remember ever asking a customer, "Hey, could you help? What do you think about this? Like, I'm just trying to get better. Would you? I'm just. I want to ask you, what's your opinion?" I've never had somebody be a jerk about that. And we can ask our employees. Our employees oftentimes have fantastic solutions that they just didn't think we were interested in. If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you've heard me talk about how the Japanese auto industry kind of revitalized itself after World War II, and Dr. Deming went over and taught them quality principles and process improvement principles, all these things. At the root of that was the employees who were the ones putting the tires on the Toyota Camry are the ones who are best capable of figuring out how to do it more efficiently and have better quality and things like that. That's one of the core tenets of process improvement is decisions and improvements are made at the lowest possible level. That is something in America for sure that we are just kind of reluctant to. And there's times where employees don't have the answers. There's some times where the employees were what they think is the wrong thing. That's 100% true too. But it doesn't hurt to ask and get perspective. You never know what you might learn. So when we find ourselves in situations where we have unawareness or uncertainty, my solution has always been just ask. Somebody out there knows. Somebody has been through this. Somebody has a perspective I don't. Somebody has experience with this. There's people I can ask. The second category is ego. And essentially what I mean by ego is unreasonably prioritizing my needs over somebody else's. That's kind of what I mean by ego. I'm sure there's a different Webster Merriam definition. That's kind of what I mean when I'm saying this. And how do we know that's happening? Well, one of the key things I know that tells me immediately this is happening is when we use the word should or synonyms for the word should. Like an example, do our employees know about how to do this? Well, they should. Well, why should they? Well, because if they should, then I shouldn't have to. If they should know this thing, then I shouldn't have to be bothered to teach them. If they should be doing this properly, it shouldn't be my problem. Though that is an indication that ego is driving the conversation. So when we use the word should, they should care about this. They should understand why this is how it needs to be. Like in the context of customers, they should know how great we are. Well, why should they know? Because my ego is telling me that's why they should know. Also synonyms like they ought to, or I would hope they know. That's kind of in that context. Hope is like a demanding kind of a statement where basically we're saying they should, right? So this is ego is one of those things that again it's not always immediately something we can identify quickly, but using the word should for me has a pretty solid track record of indicating that we're on the wrong track, and that's why that's one of the words that I did not let my leadership team use. If they came into my office and said we have a problem with Johnny, and I say, does Johnny understand the right process to follow? And the answer was, well, they should. Well, then that told me we were going the wrong direction when the conversation, because what the manager or supervisor was telling me that this should not be their problem, it should be Johnny's problem, and I don't think that's appropriate in that context. Not in the beginning. Now, of course, we're going to get to a point where we hold people accountable, and again, if you've been listening to this any length of time, I'm not bashful about that or shy about that. So, what's the solution though? What's the solution for ego? Well, this is where I do think that dreaming matters. What do I want so badly that I'd be willing to put my ego aside to get it? What outcome in my life? What lifestyle do I want? What do I want my business to be like? What do I want my life to be like? What do I want so badly that I would pay the price? The cost of admission would be my ego. What is the thing I want so badly I would pay the price of satisfying my ego to achieve this outcome? So this is where I do think dreaming matters. And the third category of problems I think we're likely to face is fear. And, you know, this one, unlike ego, pretty easy for most of us to identify. We have physiological responses. We get paralyzed. There's the fight, flight, or fight kind of thing. We get paralyzed. We're worried. We're stressed. We're anxious. Maybe we start eating a lot. Maybe we start drinking a lot, or medicating in other ways. Maybe we start not sleeping very well. Like we might lash out or take action. Like we might lash out in bursts of frustration, or take action on a problem we're facing in short bursts. We feel like our back is against the wall. Like we just have to do something really rapidly and aggressively. Like we just something. Again, the kind of the fight, flight, or fight. Reptilian brain kind of a thing. And so this one, unlike ego, is oftentimes more easy for us to identify, but it doesn't make it any easier to take action. So what's the solution? Well, this is where I think guys like Tony Robbins are right on point. Pick a bigger fear. What am I afraid of more than taking action on this thing that is scaring me? And one of my favorite ways of looking at this was from MMA fighter Frank Mir. He was, I don't know, it's maybe been, I'm not a huge MMA follower. I enjoy the sport, but I'm not up to date on all the stats and like who's, history and things like that. I'm going to guess Frank Mir was a big deal in the MMA, around 2010, somewhere in there, 2005, 2015, somewhere in that range. Very well known MMA fighter, had a great career, easily recognizable for people who follow that world at all. Anyhow, he identified his definition of hell. And it is for him, when you die, you meet the person you could have been. And for me, that's like, holy smokes, like this little fear I have of this thing now in the context of that much bigger fear is trivial. I would, that thought of what he says there, meeting the person you could have been when you die, like, there's not very many things more terrifying than that. And so whatever this fear is I'm facing on this little trivial in the context of that, it's not trivial, meaning it's not making you lose sleep and things like that, but trivial in the context compared to that other fear. Like, man, if you really think about that is a motivator. And so when we have a fear, pick a bigger fear. Pick a bigger fear to focus on, to get us, to compel us to take action on this thing. So again, I think 80-90% of the problems we face in running a business probably could be put into these three categories: unawareness / uncertainty, ego, and fear. When we're not getting the results we want, this is like my checklist of the first few things. And honestly, I start with uncertainty and I go on to ego, and those two, in my experience, those two take care of a lot of them. And so if I can have but fear is a real thing too, and I'm not diminishing that. And we're not going to build a business and not have bouts of fear. There's no question about that. But for each of these things, for each of these types of problems, if we have a go-to mechanism, if we have a plan, when I identify that I'm in a state of fear, what am I going to do? I'm going to think about, in Frank Mir's example, well, what would it be like to meet the person I could have been if I didn't have the courage to overcome this little thing? How disappointing would I be, when I'm 85 years old on my deathbed? Or, ego. Like, what do I want so bad that I'll put my ego aside? Because we're going to have times where ego just hits us in the face. Like, you've been doing this thing for this way because your ego is telling you to. What do you want so badly that you're willing to pay the price of that? And of course, uncertainty, which for many of us, we don't want to ask for help. We started a business to do it our way. Okay, well, there's a price to that. The price that is, it takes longer. And there's plenty of people out there willing and able to help if we just ask. And there's a wide variety of sources we can ask to get the help we need. So anyhow, I hope that's helpful. As usual, if you find the information I share in this podcast helpful, please share it with a friend or colleague that you think could also benefit. Of course, public sharing is appreciated also. And that's it for this week, and I'll talk to you all next week.